Hello, today I will be taking test 1 and 2 of Cambridge IELTS test, volume 20.
IELTS 20, published by Cambridge University Press and Assessment 2025. This recording is copyright. Test 1. This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to part 1. Part 1. You will hear a woman asking a friend for restaurant recommendations. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
I've been meaning to ask you for some advice about restaurants. I need to book somewhere to celebrate my sister's 30th birthday, and I liked the sound of that place you went to for your mum's 50th.
The Junction? Yeah, I'd definitely recommend that for a special occasion. We had a great time there. Everyone really enjoyed it.
Where is it again? I can't remember.
It's on Grayson Street, only about a 2-minute walk from the station.
Oh, that's good. I'd prefer not to have to drive anywhere. But I don't want to have to walk too far either.
Yes, the location's perfect, but that's not necessarily why I'd recommend it. The food's amazing. If you like fish, it's probably the best restaurant in town for that. It's always really fresh, and there are lots of interesting dishes to choose from. But all the food is good there.
Is it really expensive?
It's certainly not cheap, but for a special occasion, I think it's fine. It's got a great atmosphere, and before dinner, you can go up on the roof and have a drink. It's really nice up there, but you need to book. It's very popular, as the views are spectacular.
Sounds good. So that's definitely a possibility then. Is there anywhere else you can think of?
If you want somewhere a bit less formal, then you could try Paloma.
Where's that? I haven't heard of it.
No, it's quite new. It's only been open a few months, but it's got a great reputation already. It's in a really beautiful old building on Bow Street.
Oh, I think I know where you mean. Right beside the cinema.
Yes, that's it. I've only been there a couple of times, but I was really impressed. The chef used to work at Don Felipe's, apparently. I was really sorry when that closed down.
So is all the food they serve Spanish then?
Yeah, you can get lots of small dishes to share, which always works really well if you're in a group.
Worth thinking about.
Yeah, there's a lively atmosphere, and the waiters are really friendly. The only thing is that you need to pay a £50 deposit to book a table.
A lot of restaurants are doing that these days. I should have a look at the menu to check there's a good choice of vegetarian dishes. A couple of my friends have stopped eating meat.
Not sure. I'd say the selection of those would be quite limited.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
I've just thought of another idea. Have you been to the Audley?
No, don't think I've heard of it. How's it spelt?
Audley. You must have heard of it. There's been a lot about it in the press.
I don't tend to pay much attention to that kind of thing. So, where is it exactly?
It's in that hotel near Baxter Bridge, on the top floor.
Oh, the views would be incredible from up there.
Yeah, I'd love to go. I can't think of the chef's name, but she was a judge on that TV cookery show recently. And she's written a couple of cookery books.
Oh, Angela Frayne.
That's the one. Anyway, it's had excellent reviews from all the newspapers.
That would be a memorable place for a celebration.
Definitely. Obviously, it's worth going there just for the view, but the food is supposed to be really special.
She only likes cooking with local products, doesn't she?
Yes. Everything at the restaurant has to be sourced within a short distance, and absolutely nothing flown in from abroad.
I imagine it's really expensive, though.
Well, you could go for the set lunch. That's quite reasonable for a top-class restaurant. £30 a head. In the evening, I think it'd be more like £50.
At least that, I should think. But I'm sure everyone would enjoy it. It's not the kind of place you leave feeling hungry, though, is it? With tiny portions.
No, the reviews I've read didn't mention that. I imagine they'd be average.
Well, that's all great.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1.
Don't miss those S, guys. These things, they are pain. But D plus plural, okay? Pottery as a pottery because I'll just pottery something.
Part 2. You will hear a potter, Heather McCallum, speaking to a group of people who are visiting a pottery, a place where people make pots and other objects from clay. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16.
Ah, 1 to 16, okay.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hello and welcome. My name's Heather McCallum and I'm one of the potters who work here at Edelman Pottery. Before we go into the workshop, I just want to say a bit about the craft of pottery. Then we'll have a look at the equipment and you can try making a pot of your own. Like many people, I'm sure you know that pottery as an art form is tens of thousands of years old. And we know this because it stands the test of time. Things like baskets and pictures don't survive in the earth in the same way that pots do. And even if ancient pots are found in small pieces, they still provide a lot of information about the past. There's no doubt that pottery has given archaeologists a fascinating insight into how ancient humans lived. The shape of an artifact may have been lost, but archaeologists can tell whether the pots were for, say, storage or cooking by examining the impressions on the clay, the scratches from tools. And the clay itself can reveal where the pots came from. When I ask people why they want to take a pottery class with me, they sometimes talk about these things. Like our ancestors, they hope that something they create will also last longer than they do. That their work, whether it is good or not, might say something about humanity many years after their death. Of course, you will all have your own reasons for coming here. As far as I'm concerned, what I love most is the concentration you need to make a good pot. That focus takes you away from the stresses of everyday life. If you're elderly, it's also good exercise for hands and wrists and helps with arthritis. And of course, it's a fun activity for children because it's so messy. Here at Edelman Pottery, we show you some of the basic pottery techniques so that you can use these to create whatever you wish. A gift for a friend, perhaps. Like nearly everyone who comes here, I'm sure this is the first time you will have tried the art. So we'll keep things simple today. Now, before we move on, can I just say a word about what you're wearing? As we said in our email, please remove any watches, necklaces, etc. and put them somewhere safe. If you have long hair, do tie it back now. We'll provide aprons later, but I trust your clothes are old but comfortable, not your favourite t-shirt or jeans.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
So now we're in the workshop. Have a look around. There's a lot going on. To make pottery that will last, you need a potter's wheel, a kiln, which is basically a very hot oven where you fire the pottery, and some tools. So first, the kiln. If you look over in the far corner, you'll see one of ours. Since their invention, kilns have changed very little, though in the past 20 years, a lot of progress has been made in temperature control. Basically, a kiln removes the water from clay at temperatures of around 1,000 degrees Celsius. This allows anything you've made to set permanently in shape. It's a pretty ugly, heavy object that's hard to keep in a house or flat, so most people don't have one. You may think, can't I use my oven? Well, that's possible, but domestic ovens don't really get hot enough, and eventually the clay will crack and fall apart. Some people fire pottery in a fire pit outside, but bear in mind that can be dangerous. You also need to know about safety procedures for kilns, as they release toxic compounds into the air. Every potter needs a potter's wheel. This machine is used to shape the clay into an object with circular walls or sides, such as a bowl. Its invention revolutionized the pottery industry, allowing multiple items to be produced in a day. Lastly, there are a number of different tools that potters use, depending on what they want to make. When you start, your hands can make all kinds of shapes and curves without relying on a sculpting tool. However, there are some basic tools that you will need to handle the clay on the wheel. Some look very strange and have even odder names that you may find hard to remember. Rather than go through them all now, I'll just name a few tools as we go along. We can provide these, and I wouldn't recommend spending money on them yet. So, let's try making a pot of your own. If you sit down...
That is the end of part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 2. Part 3. You will hear 2 sociology students called Tamara and Dev discussing their research for a presentation on loneliness. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Shall we go through the notes we've made from our research into loneliness now, Dev?
OK, Samara. It's been a real eye-opener. I had no idea that loneliness has been increasing steadily for the last 20 years.
I know. And it's the same all over the world. The downside of a modern lifestyle, I guess.
Did you come to any conclusions about what the reasons for the increase are?
Well, I'd assumed it was mainly an issue for the elderly. But in fact, it's something which affects young people just as much.
So nothing really to do with longer lifespans. What about social media? In my case, far from making me feel isolated, it actually does the opposite.
It definitely does more good than harm. I'd say loneliness has a lot to do with the way cities are designed. People living in high-rise flats with not much opportunity to speak to their neighbours.
I think you're right.
Another possible reason is that people are having fewer children and don't live in large extended family groups.
But in this country anyway, that all changed decades ago. And yet loneliness is a more recent problem.
I suppose so. A more plausible explanation is that people are having to move around for work and often end up living miles away from their family and friends.
That's true.
Looking at the studies on health risks and loneliness, there are claims that loneliness has as much impact as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Or similar to the risks caused by obesity. But I'm not sure there's enough evidence for some of these claims.
Well, what about that one in Finland, which showed that loneliness increased the risk of cancer by about 10%? And those findings have been supported by other studies too.
You're right about that one. I was actually thinking of the studies on dementia. Some found no association between loneliness and dementia, and others found the opposite.
Not exactly reliable then. There's been a lot of research on cardiovascular disease and whether loneliness contributes to that.
Yes, I read that it was hard to reach a judgment, as the definition of loneliness varied quite a lot, and the responses from participants were too subjective. But there's no doubt that loneliness contributes to a weakened immune system.
Unquestionably. The data on that is sound.
What did you think about the evolutionary theory of loneliness?
Well, I thought the idea that loneliness evolved because it motivated people to be with other people quite convincing. Survival often depended on group cooperation.
But I don't think there's enough evidence to claim that there must be a group of neurons in our brains which influence social behaviour by making us feel bad when we're alone.
There are a few studies which support the theory, but not conclusively enough. More evidence is needed.
And anyway, this theory's not really useful when it comes to solving the problem of loneliness today.
True.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Should we look at the relationship between loneliness and mental health now?
Okay. So, loneliness and depression are clearly related, and that's been recognised by various governments around the world. But unlike depression, loneliness has no recognised clinical form.
There's no available diagnosis or effective treatment, and that's not likely to change.
I don't think so either. I was thinking we should start our presentation with an example from our own experience. I'd like to talk about how lonely I was when I started university, being away from home for the first time and all that.
Good idea. Everyone will be able to relate to that, although a lot of students were probably too embarrassed to admit to it.
Yeah. We could discuss ways of dealing with loneliness as well, like just talking to strangers.
Loads of studies have shown that interactions with shop assistants and bar staff make people feel more optimistic and relaxed.
I don't know about that, but it must make people feel more connected with their community.
True, although you need to be a certain kind of person to be able to just strike up a conversation.
Good point. We should say something about solitude and how being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. It's strange the way some people can't stand being by themselves while others love it.
Yeah, the research shows a certain amount of solitude is beneficial for well-being, which I appreciate. But being alone isn't something I actually like. I'd never choose to go on holiday alone, for example.
Me neither.
Well, let's not...
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4. You will hear part of a presentation by an urban planning student about the role of rivers in cities around the world. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
It's quite hard to think of a city that doesn't have a big river running through it. If you think about the major cities in the world, Shanghai, New York, Mumbai, London, they're nearly all built on rivers. When these cities were established hundreds or even thousands of years ago, the rivers were a big part of people's lives. In 16th century London, the quickest way to get from one part of the city to another was by river. But people also used the river for fishing, as the water then was relatively clean, and they would also go on boat trips up and down the river just for pleasure, as a relaxing escape from the noise and bustle of the city streets. But as industries developed and populations increased, city rivers suffered. The rising number of people meant there was a huge increase in the amount of sewage discharged into the rivers. Rivers had always been used for this purpose, but when the number of inhabitants was so small, that wasn't such a problem. However, as cities grew to over 1 million inhabitants, the impact on the rivers became more serious. In addition, other types of pollution increased as factories were built beside the river and discharged their waste materials into the water. This got worse over time. As recently as 1957, scientists at London's Natural History Museum declared that the River Thames was dead in biological terms, as the water was too filthy to support any kind of life. But in recent years, as rivers lost their industrial function, cities have begun to recognize their true value and to take steps to clean them up. For example, the River Thames is now cleaner than it's been for 150 years. These days, you can see seals swimming in the water, and recently people had to try to rescue a whale, which had got lost and swum up the river from the sea by mistake. Unfortunately, they didn't succeed, but the problem was disorientation rather than the quality of the water. Then, all around the world, riverside areas are now seen as prime sites for development. Warehouses that were once used for storing goods are now being converted into expensive restaurants and also into apartments with river views, which are in great demand and sell for astronomical prices. In Los Angeles, on the west coast of the USA, an architect has plans to revitalize the banks of the river and to make a park there, which can provide facilities for sports as well as a natural environment for relaxing in. It's also hoped that the riverside can be used for other purposes. It's been proposed that facilities could be provided for displaying projects related to various kinds of art that have been produced by local people, for example. In the city of Paris, during the summer months of July and August, all the traffic is banned from the roads by the sides of the river, and the banks are transformed into beaches where people can relax in deck chairs under potted palm trees, sunbathe, or buy a drink or a snack while enjoying the view. But to make the most of our rivers in our increasingly crowded cities, we need to allow them to regain their original purpose and be used as a means of transport, reclaiming our streets from cars and lorries. To do this, we'll have to shift more traffic back to the river, but this time cleanly and silently, making the most of modern technology. Already, more than 2 billion passengers use the ferry to travel in cities around the world, like Istanbul, San Francisco, and New York. And these numbers are set to rise further. Admittedly, it's not a fast way of travelling, but neither is a car when it's stuck in traffic. Of course, passenger traffic on roads might decrease as more people start working from home. But another recent development, the huge rise in online shopping, has meant that another form of urban traffic just keeps on growing, and that's deliveries. Trucks and vans in the city pollute and double park while dropping off parcels. Imagine using the immense capacity of shipping to take these trucks off the road. One freight barge can replace 44 large trucks, uses far less energy, and causes less pollution. When the barge docks at the riverside, the parcels could be taken the last few kilometres to their final destination on cargo bikes, electric ones, of course. This is already happening in the Dutch city of Amsterdam, and in future, the final stage could even be carried out by drone, although at present this isn't allowed. Wouldn't it be great to unblock our city centres in this way? Looking further ahead...
Ferry.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4.
Ferry. Ferry. Ferry.
That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.
Ah, ferries. 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 Ah, ferries. I get it now. Place that where apartments, park out, beaches, ferries, bike drones. Let's go, pray. Oh, 8.5.
IELTS 20. Published
Oh, I miss this right here. It's unfortunate. Oh, oh. No. No. Oh. That's just sad, man. Oh. Oh. There's pain. That is so sad. That is so sad, man. Oh. The word ferry has been burnt into my mind. Ferry. By drone. Let's see.
Can be used as a means of transport, reclaiming our streets from cars and lorries. To do this, we'll have to shift more traffic back to the river, but this time cleanly and silently, making the most of modern technology. Already, more than 2 billion passengers use the ferry to travel in cities around the world, like Istanbul, San Francisco, and New York. And these numbers are set to rise further. Admittedly, it's not a fast way of travelling, but neither is a car when it's stuck in traffic. Start working at deliveries. Road. One freight barge can replace 44 large trucks, uses far less energy, and causes less pollution. When the barge docks at the riverside, the parcels could be taken the last few kilometres to their final destination on cargo bikes, electric ones, of course. This is already happening in the Dutch city of Amsterdam, and in future, the final stage could even be carried out by drone, although at present this isn't allowed. Wouldn't it be great to unblock our city?
By ferry and transported by drone. We don't use blue here. Oh, oh. I see. I see. IELTS. Okay. And travel by something means using the singular form. Okay, I get it now. Travel by ferry, transported by drone. Singular form. Alright. Man, those... it's annoying. Okay. If in doubt, go plural. Okay. We live, we learn, guys. We live, we learn. Okay. Okay. Oh, so those two I was wrong because I lacked the knowledge. This one I was wrong because I didn't listen carefully, which is very unfortunate. 35, okay. It's 30 pounds. Yeah, highlight the incorrect choice. So so you have more cognitive load to process the correct answer. I just realized that. Okay, one more. Ah, 8.5. This was decent. If I can fix the S problem, I think I can get 9.0. Maybe. One more.
Test 2. This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to part 1. Part 1. You will hear a woman who is caring for her elderly mother talking to a friend. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
It's really good to see you, Tom. Since I had to give up work, I feel I'm losing touch with my friends and colleagues.
We really miss you in the office. We were all so sorry you had to leave. But you must be relieved to have more time to look after your mother. How is she?
Well, she's very cheerful, but she needs a lot of help.
Have you tried to get any support from the local council?
No, I didn't know I could.
Yes, they offer different kinds of practical support. They realise that carers sometimes need time for all the other responsibilities they have, apart from the person they're caring for, and also that they sometimes need a break.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell me more. How do I go about getting this support?
Well, you'd have to have an assessment of your mother's needs. That means someone would come round and talk to you about the situation and what you need. So, for a start, they'd want to know the amount of time you spend looking after your mother every day.
Okay.
Then they'll probably ask you what sorts of tasks you do for your mother during the day. Things like if she needs help with getting dressed, for example.
Right. I help her with that. And also I help her get into the shower in the morning.
Yes, that sort of thing. They'll probably ask you if you do the shopping for her and help her at meal times, and whether she can cope using money.
Yes, that's becoming a bit of a problem. She used to be very good at it, but not anymore.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
And be ready to tell them about anything you find particularly difficult about caring for your mother.
So, recently I've noticed she's started to have quite bad problems with her memory. If I wasn't there, I think she'd forget to eat, for example. And often she doesn't seem quite sure what day it is.
Yes, tell them about that. And are there any physical difficulties you have caring for her? Lifting her, for example?
Yes, she's quite heavy, and I'm afraid of hurting my back. I'd be in real trouble if that happened.
They can give you advice about that, and also about how to avoid the possibility of your mum having a fall.
Great. So, once they've done this assessment, if I'm eligible, what happens next?
Well, they might support you financially. So they might help you with transport costs, like if you have to get a taxi to take your mother for an appointment, for example.
I usually drive her myself, actually. So, could I claim for the petrol?
You could. And you can claim for the insurance too.
Oh, right.
And if you need help with the housework, they can arrange for someone to come along once or twice a week. And one other thing. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's important you look after yourself. And it seems to me you're under quite a bit of stress.
I am, yes.
Well, tell the council, because they may be able to give you some advice on how to minimise it.
Really? Though, actually, I feel so much better having talked to you. I'll get in touch with the council straight away. Now, shall we go for coffee or something?
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2. You will hear a man who works for Elmley Town Council talking to some people who want to join the small town's volunteer scheme. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Wainwright from Elmley Town Council, and I organise the town's volunteer scheme. I'm delighted you're all interested in joining the scheme. Our volunteers help to create a sense of community among the many people who live in our historic town of Elmley, and make residents and visitors feel welcome at local events. First, I'll mention just a few of the activities that volunteers carry out. One is to walk around the town centre streets wearing our volunteer T-shirt. Tourists often ask how to get to a particular shop, and they might also be grateful for recommendations about what to visit. The town holds a large number of concerts each year, and part of the volunteer's role is to get everyone in the audience to the right place as smoothly as possible. You'd be surprised how many people buy tickets, then don't check them, and head for the wrong section of the hall. Volunteers may get involved with community groups, such as sports clubs or gardeners' associations. Here, the volunteers talk about how groups can help each other. For instance, A writing group might want to travel to another town to hear a talk by a well-known author, but may not know that another club has a coach they could travel in. The town produces a monthly magazine, and anyone who lives in the town can send in articles. It's free to residents and is paid for by local businesses. That's the responsibility of the council's advertising department. We depend on volunteers, though, to find out what people think of events they've attended, and any suggestions they have for the future. The volunteers then send a summary to the editors. There are a number of clubs for retired people, and every year the council arranges lunch for all the members. The volunteers welcome the guests, and when everyone's sitting down, such as sports clubs or gardeners' associations, here the volunteers talk about how groups can help each other. For instance, a writing group might want to travel to another town to hear a talk by a well-known author, but may not know that another club has a coach they could travel in. The town produces a monthly magazine, and anyone who lives in the town can send in articles. It's free to residents and is paid for by local businesses. That's the responsibility of the council's advertising department. We depend on volunteers, though, to find out what people think of events they've attended, and any suggestions they have for the future. The volunteers then send a summary to the editors. There are a number of clubs for retired people, and every year the council arranges lunch for all the members. The volunteers welcome the guests, and when everyone's sitting down and relaxing after the meal, some volunteers put on a show. Usually around half an hour of songs and short plays. The club members really welcome the chance to chat to the volunteers at these events. The town council has a website, of course, and volunteers are asked to help by making sure residents know about it. It's updated every day with information about future activities, and we want as many people as possible to use it.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
OK, now you know some of the things our volunteers do, I'll go on to some practical matters. As you probably know, the town arranges 3 major festivals every year, and they all depend on a large number of volunteers. The book festival lasts 3 days and uses several venues which all need volunteers. More are needed for the music festival because that lasts a whole week, and even more help is required for the science festival, even though it's only 2 days long. It involves quite a lot of venues, though. It's a good idea to help at the festival you're most interested in, because you can attend most of the events for free. We try to use volunteers who are flexible, though, because some festival events are held outdoors, and the weather may affect the size of the audience and even whether the event can take place, so there can be changes at short notice. What's essential, though, is being able to get on well with other people and also to deal with someone who's behaving badly, as occasionally happens. Our plan is to get you all working in September, after a week's training starting on the 2nd. So we'll be timetabling you for duties the following week from the 9th onward. Later, in the week beginning September 23rd, we have a chat with each of you to find out how you feel about being a volunteer and what extra support you need. As a thank you to the volunteers, we arrange an annual event. In recent years, we've had a party in the town hall, and last year, a barbecue in Chamber Park. Our forthcoming event is a trip along the canal from here to Dewhurst and back. It's on Saturday, September the 28th. And if you'd like to attend, you can sign up once you start work. Now, this is the Volunteers T-shirt.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2. Part 3. You will hear two students called Rosie and Colin discussing their human geography assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Colin, I'm really struggling to think of a topic for our human geography assignment.
Me too, Rosie. I'll tell you what, let's think about the different aspects of human geography and see if we can narrow the topic down a bit to help us decide.
OK, so one aspect is population. That would be all about population density and migration and so on. Lots of facts and statistics. Maybe a bit boring?
Yeah, but quite straightforward to find on the internet.
Suppose so. How about health? I'd never thought about the links between that and geography until Professor Lee gave us that lecture on cholera. How in the 19th century, a physician used street plans and plans of water supplies to find the source of a cholera epidemic.
Yes, fascinating, wasn't it? Or we could do something more general, like economies.
So how financial and commercial factors are linked to the physical environment?
Yeah.
I thought that had been taken off the syllabus for this year.
Has it?
I'm not sure, but it might be best to avoid it.
OK. Maybe we could do something on culture. We had that lecture about culture and geography last week.
I didn't get much out of that. It was all so general, and the lecturer didn't give any useful examples.
Yeah, I hardly took any notes. It didn't seem worth it.
Me neither.
We could focus on poverty. That's something that's a global problem.
The trouble is, Dr. Lee was saying, that you have to be careful with some of the figures relating to poverty. They're sometimes deliberately manipulated.
You mean the information gets changed for political reasons?
That sort of thing, yes.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
So what are we going to do our assignment on? I'll tell you what, one of the possibilities we haven't discussed is urbanisation. And now over half the world's population lives in cities. That's really important.
OK, good idea, Rosie. Let's do that.
I love living in a big city, but of course there are problems.
Things like theft and robbery?
Yes, but where I come from, that's linked to another more serious issue, which is that a lot of people don't have jobs. That's getting worse and worse. And we also still have quite a lot of people who are homeless, though that's not quite so bad as it was.
It'd be nice to talk about some positive developments, like some of the new developments on the outskirts of cities.
Yeah, They've opened some massive new shopping centres outside my city.
Yeah, the same with mine, but it's meant a lot of the shops in the city centre are closing down. But the outskirts are ideal for buildings that need a lot of space, like for conferences. They've opened a couple of big ones.
Yes, we've got some too. It'd be nicer to have more facilities for things like football too, but that's not happening where I live.
Same in my area.
We could include something about developing disused industrial sites. It seems like a good idea because you're not doing any harm to the natural environment.
Yeah, but aren't the buildings architecturally significant?
Not really. And what people forget is that they often used quite dangerous materials, chemicals and things, which haven't been properly cleared away, so the whole site has to be made safe.
That can't be cheap, and I bet it's often not budgeted for.
You're right.
Dạ được ba nè.
Have you read about Masdar City?
In Abu Dhabi? Yes. It was designed to be a green city, wasn't it? That might be a good example of a city which set out to depend entirely on renewable energy.
Yes, we should say something about that. It was designed to be totally pedestrianised too, wasn't it? With the transport underground.
Yes, and they had big plans for recycling to reduce waste to the lowest possible level. But let's stick to talking about power sources.
Then there's that eco-town in England, Green Hill Abbots. It set out to conform to the usual principles, sustainability and so on. A lot of people were against it at first. They said the plans were unrealistic. I'm not sure how far they've got with it. I'll check.
Right. So it looks as if we have a sort of plan, and we can work from it.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3. Part 4. You will hear part of a food science lecture on fashions in food. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
There are trends in food, much as there are trends in clothing. Interest in food fashions has risen rapidly since the birth of the smartphone, when people first began taking photos of their food and instantly sharing them with their friends. The food industry in the UK in particular is obsessed with finding and exploiting the next big food trend. Marketeers aim to create a huge demand for a food item which was previously unknown or not needed. One of the most effective ways of promoting a new food product is by using social media influencers as brand ambassadors. In return for free samples, many influencers will post content about a product. Although there are influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers who can command large fees for their services. Companies which sell vegan produce were pioneers in being able to increase sales really quickly in this way. For a food item to become really popular, it has to be readily available. So supermarkets have a role to play in creating a new food trend. They have dedicated teams closely following which new products or ingredients are trending on social media and are particularly interested in what well-known chefs are putting on their menus. I'd like to look at a few examples of marketing campaigns which were really successful in launching a new fashion trend. Starting in the 1990s with the avocado. A British PR company was hired to raise its profile and stimulate demand. They paid for a group of journalists to travel out to South Africa to meet avocado farmers. Articles written following this visit helped to educate the British public about the avocado, which at this time was certainly not the daily staple it's since become. Advertisements were designed to promote the avocado as a superfood, rich in nutrients and therefore beneficial for health. Avocados became hugely fashionable, and within a few years, UK avocado sales had grown from £13 million annually to around £150 million, making it one of the most successful fresh produce campaigns in UK history. Oat milk is a recent example of a new product which became fashionable very quickly. Now there are many brands available, but one company which had early success was the Swedish brand Oatly. They attracted a lot of attention with a media campaign which used provocation as a way of getting their message across effectively. The fact that this campaign aggravated competitors producing milk from dairy cows was seen as a plus, as it helped to make oat milk seem cool. In the USA, the brand decided against a big retail launch in favour of getting the product into coffee chains, which removed the need for a big advertising budget. This proved far more effective than offering samples in supermarkets. Oat milk had an advantage over other alternative milk products, such as almond milk. Many consumers prefer it because it has less of an impact on the environment. It requires significantly less water to produce than other alternative milk products, and it also has a relatively low carbon footprint. Norwegian skrei, a rarely available seasonal fish delicacy, otherwise known as Arctic cod, is now found on the menus of Michelin-starred restaurants throughout Europe. The demand for skrei has been used by a food marketing agency to build the reputation of Norway's fisheries in general. Marketing surveys have shown that a significant number of shoppers now associate Norway with excellent seafood. Food trends can be considered a good thing in some ways, as they can benefit farmers and food producers enormously. The public can also be encouraged to buy things which are more sustainably produced. But ethical concerns have been raised about the effects a surge in demand can cause. Quinoa is a classic example. This plant is native to Peru, and when demand peaked some years ago, the price soared, making it unaffordable for local people. While the popularity of quinoa has benefited farmers financially, there have been other negative consequences. As demand grew, farmers began working the land all year round in order to produce more quinoa. One issue has been that the fertility of the soil decreased dramatically, which could potentially lead to desertification in some areas. Another example would be the case of...
That is the end of part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 4.
Soil. 8.5. Yay!
Test 2.
No!
This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only.
Damn it! Stress. Stress. Okay. No more S fail, but lexical fail. Okay. This is very sad. Extremely sad, man. Okay. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. I am leaving.